Alright guys, just another video here to share further thoughts on the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025, which originally used to be my favorite fragrance of all time, next to even all of the niche offerings. 2014 edition here and 2020 edition here. I was able to dig up some new bottles out of storage in cool, dark, dry storage, and doesn't compete with the original versions. This new version is such a disappointment that I'm going to share further thoughts on it as I've been testing it out quite a bit. I've used up quite a bit. Just wanted to get a full idea of how this fragrance wears and all that good stuff. And also touch on the new Dior Homme Intense 2025. That's coming as well this year. And then give you my thoughts on some of the fragrances that Francis Kurkdjian has created for Dior so far. Find out all about this coming right up. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Sebastian, talking to you about the latest Dior Homme Parfum 2025. Have you gotten your nose on this one yet? What are your thoughts? Do let me know. Do let us know. Add a comment below so we can all find out what your thoughts are. I know there are people that enjoy this version, but I think there are more people that don't enjoy Dior Homme Parfum 2025 in comparison to the folks that enjoy it. Sure, I think this version has been made for the masses, and I think Dior Homme Parfum, when it first came out in 2014, I think the idea of male parfum fragrances was pretty non-existent. At least I don't recall seeing any other parfum editions. They had launched the parfum edition for Fahrenheit. They had also launched the parfum edition for SAUVAGE, but I don't recall other brands doing a lot of parfums back then. But ever since those three fragrances launched, there have been a ton of parfums, elixirs, the absolutes, and I think this was a way for LVMH, who owns Dior, which Francis Kurkdjian works for. They wanted to update the fragrance, make it much more mass appealing, and so a lot more people fall in love with it, and they wanted to jump on the more popular and trendy parfum concentration of the men's designer fragrances. But up until that point, I considered Dior Homme Parfum to be the best fragrance on the market. If you've not watched my videos and you're new to the channel, you can just search Dior Homme Parfum. You'll find a ton of videos. I've been a fan since I first bought it at the end of 2014. In France, I bought my first 3 bottles in 2014 after it launched, and I was visiting France, and because it never got a USA release, including the 2020 edition. It has never had a USA launch up until the 2025 is when Dior Homme Parfum got its launch. But personally, I don't consider the new Dior Homme Parfum Dior Homme Parfum. It's a complete different fragrance. It's updated and changed. The formula is different, and it smells totally different. For me, when I go back to the video I shot like 2 weeks ago, when I first got my nose on it, I felt like it was overdosed with lavender. I said there was lavender in there. I'm not sure where I was getting that. And at that time, it was reminding me of Prada L'Homme and faintly of something like Armani's Code. It kind of was in that ballpark. And I always thought Dior was the most luxurious house next to Chanel, and I always felt like, you know, Prada, Armani was below how quality and luxurious Dior had been up to that point. I don't consider Dior that luxurious anymore, especially with the fragrances they're releasing. And so at that time, when I smelled the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025, I thought, wow, this doesn't smell luxurious anymore. It just smells like another men's designer fragrance, and there's a ton of them out there on the market. Why do I need this one? But Dior Homme Parfum 2014 and 2020, uber luxurious, uber sexy, orgasmic experience when you spray that fragrance. The smell is super, super luxurious. I hadn't experienced a men's fragrance like that ever before. It's like I said, the most luxurious. The way Dior started their Parfum editions, in 2012 they launched SAUVAGE Parfum. They've also changed that up once from 2012 to 2017. They've launched Fahrenheit Parfum, which they've kept. I believe it's not changed. Although it used to be called Fahrenheit Le Parfum, then they changed it to Fahrenheit Parfum. And then of course Dior Homme Parfum 2014 and 2020, and now we've got the 2025. So the prices for Dior Homme Parfum, 50 ml for $160, 75 ml for $180. So they've gone back to the original Dior Homme Parfum. This is the original, yes, in 2014. It was a 75 ml. They launched a 75 ml in 2014. In 2020, they made it 100 ml. And I think maybe because, I don't know if the pandemic had anything to do with it. Maybe they were trying to give to people that might feel like the fragrance is too expensive in a 75 ml, so you get more juice kind of a thing. But now it's gone back to 75 ml. Which is also another disappointing factor about this fragrance. Not only is the smell so disappointing, the price point is also back to how it was. Plus, it's almost $200, especially in the USA after sales tax. You're looking at about $200 for this, because like if it's almost 10%, you're going to pay an extra $18 for the 75 ml, and so that's almost $200. They call this a woody amber floral fragrance. I can see that. It has notes of iris, patchouli, vetiver, coumarin, and the Dior website said you would get coffee and chocolate touches from wearing the new Dior Homme Parfum. And also there's hay-like qualities. I think we're getting that from the coumarin. And I think my mind was playing tricks on, or my nose was playing tricks on me. It's the hay that kind of gave me a lavender-like combo, but maybe it's the combination of all the notes. Again, it's no longer luxurious. It's just another men's designer fragrance. It doesn't act like a parfum either, sadly. It goes down really fast because it doesn't have that beefy quality that I like in the originals. It's more airy, not dense. Just the experience is boring. There's a metallic thing happening in it as well, which I mentioned when I did my first video, and it's definitely happening later on with the amount of times I've worn it. And I'm getting the reminders of something like Prada L'Homme and Armani Code. But after I sampled those two fragrances to see how close it is to Dior Homme Parfum 2025, they don't smell alike at all. In fact, I was at one point thinking the Armani Code Parfum, which I've not given it a very positive review, was smelling a little better than the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025. So it was one time. I appreciate those two fragrances. Between the Armani Code Parfum and Prada L'Homme, I believe I prefer, I'm for sure prefer the Prada L'Homme, but I prefer Prada L'Homme Intense more than Prada L'Homme. I just think it's a little more concentrated. It's also a little bit more sexy and a little darker. But the fact that I got the lavender from when I was sampling, and I still get the lavender, I felt like it was kind of somewhat close to Prada L'Homme. But again, when I compared those two, they didn't come off very similar. They just reminded me of something, maybe a combination of different men's fragrances that featured iris, who knows. But with Dior Homme Parfum 2025, you get a light trace of coffee and chocolate. It's not prominent. The ingredients also seem cheap, like they don't seem luxurious. I keep saying the word luxurious. The originals are so luxurious. This version seems cheapened down, like we're not getting the finest quality. Because I felt like Dior Homme Parfum 2014 and 2020 were the most luxurious and the most quality ingredients that we were getting. Here it does have a cheapness. I don't know if it's the fact that I get metallic touches from it. And I mentioned it wears a bit on the metallics, like something sharp hitting my nose in the wearing experience. So is it because of this experience I'm thinking it's not as luxurious as I wanted it to be? It also seems like the iris is not so prominent. There's a lot more happening in this fragrance, the new Dior Homme Parfum 2025, in comparison to the original 2014 or 2020. I feel like the iris is not in your face. They've toned it down, and they're giving us the coumarin, which is tonka beans basically, the vetiver, which is grassy, woody, earthy, and then patchouli. It's not so strong with the patchouli. It's not the patchouli that I know and love. It's not the smell of the kind of patchouli I know and love. So, and the wearing experience, the longevity is pretty dismal, unfortunately. It does linger on, but it doesn't have that room-filling qualities. And I'm not saying Dior Homme Parfum 2014 and 2020 are like these extreme room fillers. They fill a room much more than the new version. But I'm not saying it's something like followed by kerosene, which is a smell that once you spray in a room, it will not leave for days and days and days. This is not that, and it never was. But for me, when I'm comparing the 2014 and 2020 with the 2025, it's a weakling. The new 2025 is a weakling. So those are my thoughts. I just wanted to get another video out there. I'm going to touch on Francis Kurkdjian a bit. Francis Kurkdjian happens to be one of my favorite perfumers, but I'm so disappointed at what's going on over at Dior. At least with MFK, they've got some of the older classics coming back, like Absolute Pour le Soir, Reflets d'Ambre, which reminds me of Ciel de Gomme. And let's see what happens over there. But with the house of Dior, what the hell is going on over there with Francis? I almost feel like Francis doesn't have creative control at Dior. Somebody else is actually doing the work. So does it mean that Francis has taken on too much work? Like he's got his own brand, MFK, he's got Dior, and then on top of that he's making fragrances for Air France, and like he's got way too many irons in the fire kind of a thing. And so Dior kind of is taking a back seat when he's focusing on other things. Because when Francois Demachet was over at Dior, he gave us some good stuff. And so far, with Francis Kurkdjian being over at Dior, they've been a bit lackluster. I think out of all of the fragrances I'm going to talk to you about today that he's done, my favorite happens to be the Esprit de Parfum edition of Rouge Trafalgar, which I'll get to in a bit. Because everything else he's done has been a bit underwhelming, if not extremely disappointing. So, what do you guys think? Do you think somebody else is... I don't know. I feel like whoever runs LVMH is running what happens at Dior. Or maybe the goal is to just become like everyone else and just kill a brand, which, again, as I said, I regard it as one of the highest quality luxury, designer houses. Because when I was first getting into this game, and even before, I felt like Mugler had some of the best fragrances. Not now, back then. But I always regarded Dior as being the most luxurious of all fashion houses. And the fragrances that went with that house were always the best of the best. But Mugler was always cranking out unique designer fragrances that didn't smell like a lot of other designer fragrances. But now Dior just seems like every other designer. There's nothing out there that I consider like, oh my god, that's the best fragrance, which is what I felt with Dior Homme Parfum all along until the launch of the 2025 Dior Homme Parfum. So what do you guys think is going on over at Dior with Francis Kurkdjian? Because I know he can do a lot of great fragrances. He's done a lot of great stuff. And his brand, MFK, is pretty quality. But I feel like I'm almost thinking like he's like a student and he's doing the work, but it has to go through somebody else, and they say, no, we can't release this. Do this and do that, and tone it down, and not make it this and add that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that what's going on over at Dior with Francis Kurkdjian? Yeah, because everything else has been pretty lackluster. Everything else, except for the Rouge Trafalgar Esprit de Parfum. It's just been underwhelming and disappointing, and I'm hoping it doesn't continue, because that's going to be the demise of Dior if it hasn't already. With their fragrances, I'm talking about. I'm not into their fashions. I haven't bought any of their clothing and things like that, which I still consider to be very luxurious. But I'm talking about fragrances in general here, and I feel like it's just been an afterthought. I don't know, maybe they're going through too much marketing research, and it's becoming like like too many thoughts came into something and it diluted it down and made it extremely boring. I don't know. That could happen. Maybe they go through market research and focus groups and things like that, and people decide, okay, you need to change that and add this and remove that and do a little bit more of this. And I don't know. Maybe that's what's going on here, because it's certainly very, very disappointing. Let's see what happens next, because the next thing that's coming is Dior Homme Intense, and there's a 2025 edition of it. But from what I've been reading, the formula has remained the same. Is this true? This is like what, the 3rd or 4th edition of Dior Homme Intense? We shall see. But if you've gotten your nose on Dior Homme Intense 2025, let us know. The notes breakdown for this is Iris, Ambrette, and Cedar. Now I recall there were more notes to the notes breakdown for this fragrance, but I think this is what they're releasing for the 2025 edition. And so we shall see. But if you've gotten your nose on Dior Homme Intense 2025, let us know, add a comment below. Also let me know what your thoughts are on Dior Homme Parfum 2025. I'm going to spray a little bit of the 2014 edition because it's absolutely one of the best fragrances ever made. I think I never really considered oh my god, this is so good. I need to put some on my other hand as well. It's super delicious. I never considered Francois Demachet to be like, oh, the best perfumer out there, but Vanilla Diorama is amazing. Dior Homme Parfum, Fève Delicious, which is discontinued sadly, amazing. He's done some amazing work at Dior, which unfortunately I can't say for Francis Kurkdjian over at Dior. But let's see what happens to Dior Homme Intense. But either way, if it's the same, then he has nothing to do with it. So I think we're going to have to wait to see what new fragrance he creates over at Dior to really see what's going to happen with the brand. Oh man, the smell of Dior Homme Parfum in the room is so intoxicating, so gorgeous, so delicious. It's again, that's one of the best men's fragrances ever created. And I haven't worn the 2014 edition for a long time. And even though they say the formula is the same, I do get some minor differences in this 2014 edition. It's super fantastic, amazing stuff. But in this section of the video, let's talk about some of the fragrances that Francis Kurkdjian has created for Dior. Most of them disappointing. We'll start off with the Sauvage Eau Forte. As you can see, it's that alcohol-free stuff that gives you this kind of a milky consistency. And so I'm not the biggest fan of Sauvage, the collection. I like the original because it was all that ambroxan, and I like the elixir, which is an ultra luxurious take on the original. But here with Eau Forte, what the hell were they thinking? What is this? To me, it smells like an herb shop in the south of France with musks and woods and resins. That's what it smells like to me. And does it perform on you? I don't know. I feel like the fragrances have gotten dumber. I mean, the things that they're doing, alcohol-free fragrances, like, okay, yeah, we're concerned about our hair, but I've not really clicked with alcohol-free fragrances. That's what I should say. I haven't clicked with attars, roller balls, and roll-ons and all this stuff. I hate dabbing. Just give me the perfume the way it's supposed to be, which is supposed to be sprayed and enjoyed. But I don't like alcohol-free fragrances, and I feel like this Sauvage Eau Forte was a dud. Especially the fact that it reminds me of a south of France herb market with musks and woods, as I said. I mean, it's a disappointing fragrance, but maybe it's doing fine. What do you guys think? Sauvage Eau Forte, what a disappointment that is. Next, DIORIVIERA. So DIORIVIERA, I liked it. It wasn't a wow. It's kind of a green rose and fig fragrance. YSL has Lavalier, which I prefer much, much more than DIORIVIERA. It's umphier, it's more juicy, it's more luscious. Here it's kind of green and rosy and I don't know, figgy, fruity. It's more of a it's on the light side, and even though the YSL, I don't want to compare it too much, but it's kind of a similar idea, a different take on it. It's a green, rosy fig fragrance. It just works better. It smells so much better. This is just kind of boring. I don't hate this fragrance as much as I hate Sauvage Forte or the Dior Homme Parfum 2025, but I also it's a bit lackluster, I think. But what do you guys think about Dior Riviera? Then we have New Look. So New Look, there used to be a New Look 1947. And this is another thing. They keep recycling names. It's like, leave the name, or if you're going to discontinue the fragrance, move on. Don't name the same thing. So they rebranded the fragrance, dropped the year 1947, which is like a key year for Dior fashion. And they're just calling it New Look because they wanted to use the name, but they dropped the 1947. New Look 1947, I actually have a full review on the channel. It's an amber floral fragrance, really nicely done with benzoin, lots of benzoin in that fragrance. Here, it's aldehydes, frankincense, and amber. So it's fizzy, it's airy, it's smoky, and ambery in the dry down. Once again, a bit boring, not really exciting. I don't have another fragrance to compare this to at YSL, but with the comparison of Dior Riviera to Lavalier, between the two, I much prefer Lavalier, and here, it's okay. It's, I don't know, it's fine. Not a wow, but not a dud. What do you guys think of New Look? Let me know. And what do you guys think of this fragrance in comparison to New Look 1947, which was a much superior fragrance, once again created by Francois Demachet. But let's go on to my favorite of his creations so far. It's Rouge Trafalgar Esprit de Parfum. So this is actually a redo of the original, and I think he's done a good job. I don't know if he's working with the original formula or if it's a new formula. So in the end, if it's the original formula and he's updated it, he's working on something that Francois Demachet had originally created, which is what Rouge Trafalgar was. The original is very light, perfect for hot days. Here, you can wear it all year round. It smells super juicy, fruity, and it's all these kind of fruity notes that it creates a cherry accord. So really, really wonderful. I really love this. And according to Dior and some retail establishments that I've asked, this is the most popular in the Esprit de Parfum collection of fragrances. Highly priced though, but also it's highly concentrated, so a little goes a long way. And then finally, last but not least, I'm going to talk to you about Gris Dior Esprit de Parfum. I think it's a nicely done, beefed up version of the original, which I was never a fan of when it was part of Francois Demachet's first creation called Gris Montagna. So I started enjoying it when they changed the name to Gris Dior, and I think it got reformulated a couple times. I still love that fragrance, and I feel like it's a very successful fragrance for Dior, and it was given that they made a Esprit de Parfum edition of it. It's just more thickened up and intensified, and so it smells great to me. I don't know about you guys, maybe it's too pricey. Sometimes some folks might be turned off of the actual fragrance even though it smells great because the price is overly expensive. But I actually like this. I like this kind of a DNA, the Patchouli Rose Oak Mossy combo. And definitely glad to have the Esprit de Parfum here. Again, once again, very long lasting, but also very expensive. So that's all I have that Francis has created while he's over at Dior. Although they brought back Au Noir, which was something that he had created way long time ago. They brought that back just when Francis Kurkdjian moved to Dior. They also brought back Cologne Blanche. They've shelved those fragrances already. I don't think those were the strongest fragrances. Au Noir, I really appreciated the original in the green juice, but the new version was a little different. I didn't really care for it that much. So I guess we had somewhat of a clue then when they initially launched the trio of fragrances. It was Bois d'Argent, Cologne Blanche, and Au Noir. When you got your nose on those two fragrances, the Cologne Blanche and Au Noir, at that time we should have kind of gotten a clue that it's not going in the right direction, even with these two relaunches of these two fragrances. But what do you guys think about those two? They launched a trio kit, which I have. I didn't buy them in the bottles because I already have a large bottle of Au Noir in the green juice. I didn't buy the new one. But did you guys get your nose on those two fragrances? Those were two fragrances that Francis had created back in the 2000s for Dior. And if you have a bottle of either, let me know what your thoughts are. But let me know your thoughts on all of the stuff that I covered today, especially Dior Homme Parfum 2025. Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you think is going to be the future of Dior? What will we see What are we going to see? Also, if you recall, I don't have any feminine targeted Dior fragrances. I know he's done a few there as well. It's just I don't buy those fragrances that often, and I didn't think that they were deserving of being purchased. But if one of those feminine targeted releases you consider really great under Francis Kurkdjian, let me know what it is. But what do you guys think we're going to get next from Dior? Of course, we got the Dior Homme Intense coming, but apparently the formula is the same. I don't know why they're keeping the formula the same of that one, and they're changing it of this one. It just doesn't make sense. Who's making these decisions? Really, really stupid decisions, I think. If you're going to keep that the same, why not keep this the same? Are people going to really love this one over the original Dior Homme Parfum? The original Dior Homme Parfum, was it just not selling? That's why you had to update it? I don't know what's going on, but we'll just have to wait and see what's going on. But for me, honestly, I'm so disappointed in this fragrance. It's the end of an era, I guess. 10 years later, they killed Dior Homme Parfum. I'm just glad I have bottles backed up because this stuff is amazing. If you can still get a bottle, get it. I was able to search online. I know a lot of places are sold out. Although the thing is, it was never launched here, so it was always selling at discounters and places like that. But for a long time, for a year actually, because at the end of 2023, I did a video for Dior Homme Parfum selling at Fragrance Buy, and up to until the announcement of this, and when people first started getting their nose on it and hating it, they were selling bottles. I mean, Fragrance Buy had bottles constantly until the end of last year when they were completely cleaned out because people knew that the new version was going to be a dud. But yeah, you can still find some product out there here and there. If you can find it, get it, because the new version sucks big time and the original is a masterpiece. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.